Welcome, everyone, to the Contact Center Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. And today we have a very special guest here with Steve Kaay. Now, Steve's not only an expert, you've been in the business for over 30 years. You've actually led outsourcing partners all throughout the world. You actually oversaw 3,600 outsourced partners or individual agents at a single time. You've been a former president of the Contact Center Association of Phoenix. You've got a lot to say and maybe change our perspective a little bit here. We're going to talk about how we want to flip the BPO quality perceptions on its head, because the typical perception is 72% of companies outsource. So it's an important part of our business. But the perception is I'm going to have to give something up. Quality is a big part of that. So we're going to go through the process of debunking that today, if that isn't a good teaser. But is there anything else that you'd like to add just about your career and a little bit about you before we get started?
I'm absolutely a believer in the quality of outsourcing done well. And I think that as we share some information here, I think that there are going to be some eyes open to discover some things that people aren't aware of as to the quality that they can experience outsourcing their company's customer interface with the BPOs. I've been doing this for 30 years. And I think we've learned some incredible lessons to pass along.
Fantastic. Over those 30 years, there's got to be some top lessons that you've learned along the way. Maybe you could share the highlights for us.
I think part of what I would address as we want to talk about lessons learned or best lessons learned, obviously BPOs chosen correctly will still take your engagement to make sure that your culture gets embraced by those BPO partners that you select. And they'll still need your input to hone communication skills, language skills, and other competencies, probably product specialization information that they'll need to learn. But all of those things are teachable, they're learnable, and you're going to find that virtually all of our BPO partners offshore are going to be eager to learn and grow in their career, probably unlike what you might find here in the US.
I know one of the things that when we were talking before is that a lot of people have concerns. My industry is complex. There's a lot of nuances. I have to have somebody that has experience. And what you've proven over the years is if your BPO partner is dedicated and the agents are dedicated, that you can actually train them to handle these consultative engagements, as you would call it. Because with chatbots and AI and everything taking on more and more of the lower level engagements, what that means is the agents have to take on more of the harder consultative engagements to address them. How you can take somebody that maybe doesn't even have any background in the industry that the contact center has to address and make them into somebody that you'd be very proud of to represent your business.
Yeah, happy to do that. So I spent about 9 years offshore leading an in-house offshore operation in the Philippines. I was in the auto parts space, Steve, and we sold aftermarket auto parts. We had a large contingent of employees in the Philippines. And I have to tell you, the Philippines isn't really an automotive culture. What I mean by that is our employees don't have cars in the Philippines. They don't drive. In fact, when they go home, their mom and dad don't drive. There's not a car sitting in the driveway. That is to say, they can't just go home, lift the hood and find out, okay, where's the alternator again? That's not available to them. They're not a car culture. They ride around in jeepneys. Few people have cars, but for the most part, they don't drive. They rely on public transportation. And so it was incumbent upon us to teach them what they needed to do and what they needed to know to help our US-based customers in the auto parts space. And we were incredibly successful doing that. Some of that took training with some of our vendors who provided parts. Others, we provided local automotive school there on site. All in all of the tasks that we undertook to equip them made them incredibly successful in serving our customers and doing a great job.
So I think that the first lesson learned that I took away from what you're saying here is that quality can be taught. In other words, if you've got somebody on the other end that is willing and open to be taught, and genuine about being taught so they can do their job well, that you can teach the skills that are necessary. It's a really good visual that you created there for us, right? If you don't drive a car, even let alone even look under a hood, how are you going to be able to consult with people that are trying to find a part for a particular problem that they're having on a particular model? And you can see how the complexity would get quite dramatic. Give us an idea. The quality of the engagements, the consultative engagements and responses that your agents gave in the Philippines versus in other areas or in-house, maybe in the US or something like that. How would you rate the difference between those two?
First of all, interactions with customers are either primarily transactional in nature or they are consultative in nature. And so all of us in this space hope that we can move our employees to facilitate more consultative interactions than transactional. We can get AI to step in over the coming years to do transactional kinds of interactions with our customers. They can't do consultative kinds of things. That comes from product expertise. And I'm here to tell you that our outsourced partners did incredibly well at learning our products. And it didn't really matter that it happened to be in the auto parts space. They could have been learning about washers and dryers or lawnmowers or anything else. Their hunger to learn, their desire to learn set them up to be successful. Now, we were not only partnering with employees in the Philippines, but we had partners in other geographies as well. We were in the Dominican Republic. We were in Tijuana in Mexico. And so what I did come to learn over time, and at least for our partners, our BPO partners who are in Mexico, so they tended to be more of a car culture, which meant that they had a head start to understanding and learning about car parts. So my Mexican employees drove to work. In fact, at lunchtime, they went out and lifted the hood on their own car with everybody else gathered around and wanted to show everybody what they'd done since yesterday to their vehicles. Much more of a car culture. And so it was like a diving board. It was a springboard. They got a head start on everybody else because of what they already knew, but they both ended up in similar places because of their desire to learn and to be effective communicators and consultants to our customers. And that surprised me, but both were incredibly successful.
So I want to start with the end and then figure out how you got there, because when you explained it to me, it was incredibly intuitive. What you're saying here is these BPO partners, whether it was the car culture or not, were able to get to a level of excellence in addressing these consultative engagements in a very high quality way, in a way that actually exceeded in-house teams, where the quality level was higher. Now, here's my next question. Why? Why is that the case? Obviously, if we can get people locally here that are English language first speakers that drive cars or use lawnmowers or use our healthcare system or whatever it is, that we can get higher quality agents and higher quality than engagements and scores and retention and revenue for the company. Why is it that you were getting higher quality overall consultative engagements and scores and on demo lines, KPIs and revenue, all of that from your outsourced partners? What is the difference?
So I think it's a couple of things. One is that our outsourced partners have a different view of work than our US employees do. So let's say, for example, we're spending $15 per hour for an employee's work. In the US, that really gets you a lot of indifference on the part of an employee. So that person is just trading time for money, or it's $18, or it's $19, whatever. It's low enough that they're always looking for something else. And so what you get from that employee is a lack of caring, a lack of concern, a lack of effort, a lack of longevity and tenure and care about their job. In our outsourced partners, what we found was that their approach and view of work was very different. They have a desire to go to work and to make a difference. You and I think about that we work for a company, but many of our outsourced partners, they don't work for the company, they work for their family. they would say, I work for my wife and kids. I don't work for just the company. So I'm able to endure difficulty. I can endure hardship. I can endure things that are unexpected, turn of events that throw me a curveball. I stick with my job because I don't work for the company. I work for my family. And so I think that's about who we hire, who we interview for, who we identify. There's also a culture of finding a good job and hanging on to it. And you find that in outsourcing in a way that you don't find in the US. So for similar dollars spent, the longevity you get, the care that you get, the interest, the desire to learn is all significantly higher than it is in the US. And that makes a big difference in how we interact with the customer in the end. It's a huge win for the company to invest in outsourcing and in people like that.
One of the things that just was like those lightning bolt to the head moments, where I got it was you pay somebody those kinds of wages, or even more than that, going to the $20 range, $30 range. That is not a career. And we use agents. The role of an agent is looked upon as a stepping stone. And so what I'm going to do before I figure out what I want to do in life, or so many companies these days are trying to give career paths to agents and say, look, this is a stepping stone to an entire career, where the outsourcing partners that you're talking about, they already look at it as a career. This is what I do. This is what I take pride in, because this is what I do to take care of my family. I'm not looking at this as a temporary gig where I'm going to go out and have beers with my buddies on Friday and not even think about it anymore. Very different mentality. And that mentality means I'm going to work harder. I'm going to make sure I'm better at what I do. I'm going to stay longer, so I'm not going to have to be retrained over and over again. It brings up another question. And I'd actually love to have you rate this on a scale of 1 to 10, if you don't mind, because I love to get that feeling and then have you explain it. Agent turnover is a major issue in the industry because you've got to retrain all the time and keeping the quality of your agents together, and they're maintaining the culture and everything. How important is agent turnover to running a successful contact center, no matter where? On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is not important at all. 10, it's vital to the overall growth and sustainability of the company. If you could just answer that, and I'm going to have a follow-up question too.
Sure. It's in the 8, 9 range. Absolutely. It's at the top. Retaining your employees is absolutely critical.
So if it's critical, then my next question here is, what is the difference between agent turnover when you're trying to do it in-house in country, in our own home, the US, versus agent turnover in the outsourcing partners? When you're treating them as long-term employees, career employees, you're investing heavily in training, all the things that you would normally do. What's the difference in the turnover?
Generally speaking, retention with our outsourced partners tends to be higher, better retention, hanging on to our employees, longevity is longer, all things equal. Provided, let me add a caveat here, that there isn't another BPO a couple of miles down the road offering $1 more an hour. So that can be a factor. But if you're paying people fairly and you're treating people well, people stay with a leader, with a supervisor who's taking good care of them and has their best interest in mind, and will stay in that job and won't leave for another $1 an hour because they're finding a job that's fulfilling and the company has their best interest at heart. That's what I typically have seen. People don't jump if you've hired right and you're taking care of your employees.
That puts all this together. The quality of the outsourcing partners that are international that you've been working with, where it just worked out really well. Do you have any stories that you could share with us on that front?
Sure. So recently I worked with a healthcare company, and they are in the healthcare imaging space. And the nature of the work was to schedule health appointments and to do some back office work of transcribing doctors' orders via fax into a database where it maybe hasn't come across clearly. Doctors don't write very clearly on their signatures. They're certainly almost undiscernible. So that work was being done in the US for X number of dollars per hour. We found them an outsourced partner, and we found that the work that they did at our outsourced partner was absolutely of higher quality, fewer errors. Employees stayed longer. Longevity was nearly twice as long as employees in the US. The care and follow through was up significantly. That is to say, making sure that all the T's were crossed and I's were dotted, that the follow through was significantly better. That's a quality kind of commentary. And the US based company is still employing that group and grown that group from probably 50 to a couple of hundred individuals. And they're absolutely ecstatic and have given them a raise because of the effectiveness of that particular outsourced partner on their business. Yeah. And I can probably tell you two or three more.
It makes me feel like the motivations to outsource need to evolve, just as all kinds of things are evolving in the industry. AI is one of them. So here's what I mean by that, is that we typically as an industry look to outsource partners. We need to reduce costs because too often we're looked at a cost center, not as a value center. That's a whole nother podcast we could do. We need to save costs. We have hours of operation for the contact center that we want to extend and into holidays. There's very tactical reasons why we typically choose to outsource. And what I'm hearing from you is, yes, those are absolutely valid reasons why you want to be outsourcing, but you've got to put another one on to that reason to outsource, and that is to upgrade the quality of your contact center.
That's absolutely true.
So with that, tell me a little bit about, over the course of your career, the things that as you look back, and you've had this perspective, not just since you and I started talking for years now, tell us a little bit about maybe the accomplishments that you've had. What are you most proud of that you've been able to accomplish?
I think what I'm most proud of is being able to take a group of people on a journey. That is to say, casting a vision for where we need to go, leading, and then developing people who knows Steve K would probably call me a people developer. So developing people and then seeing them launch and further their career without you going on. In fact, as we're recording this last week, one of my proteges, after 19 years, has just launched into an executive role offshore somewhere. Couldn't be prouder. Teaching the business, casting a vision, bringing people together to accomplish a particular vision. That's what's satisfying in reaching those corporate goals that have been set for us. That's what's rewarding.
That's a focus on people, and we're in a people business. So investing in the people is something you've been the most proud in. And if you could translate that and anything else into what kind of advice for folks that are watching this podcast or listening to this podcast right now, what is your advice to them when they're now considering outsourcing?
I think my advice would be you can increase the quality of the interactions and interfaces with your customers through outsourcing. No question, unequivocal answer would be absolutely. This is the direction that I would recommend that you investigate. I've had tremendous success, dollar for dollar spent. The quality is higher, longevity is higher. My customers are more satisfied. And I don't think you can miss if you pick a great partner. And when I say pick a good partner, I mean pick a good partner and then cultivate the relationship to help them understand what you need to be successful. It's a real win.
And I said it before, it's just so intuitive. They're in it for a career, not a stepping stone, not for beer money Friday night. So the motivation is just completely different. That's what really was a light bulb moment for me. You mentioned culture, and I wanted to ask you specifically about that. Why is culture so important? You've mentioned it a number of times today.
Certainly, culture is made up of both skill and character. So, and sometimes we interview primarily for skill and forget all about character. And when I talk about character, that's an ambiguous term. What I mean by character is embracing your company's values. And those values can be things like commitment and hard work, truthfulness, ownership, follow through. I don't know what your values might be, but you certainly want to find people before you hire them already embrace those kinds of values. So if they do, it's easier to create culture where skill is present and you're enhancing the skill. Character is also present and you're enhancing the character. What do I mean by that? We're being the kinds of people that our customers like to deal with. So one of the things that I talked about, for example, in our list of values was truthfulness. Some people would call that honesty, candidness. Some degree, we live in a culture that has a default for distrust. We don't trust our neighbors. We don't trust our boss. We don't trust our political leaders, et cetera, et cetera. We start when we meet people with a cautiousness and a default around distrust. But we want to create a culture of trust and truthfulness. And one example here, and we'll go back to talking about contact centers, we want to make sure that the way we conduct ourselves in business, embracing those values, are mirrored over into our outsourced partner. So you're going to have to find leaders who exemplify those values when you go looking for a partner. You can't just teach it to the front line and the leaders aren't aligned with them. Your front line is going to follow leadership. Here's a real life example of this, and it's a little controversial, but I'll share it anyway. So sometimes in our outsourced partners, we will tell our employees and outsourcers, you can't tell the customer, you can't be truthful with them about where you're located. We don't want you to tell them, or we just want you to say, I can't answer you. So here's what I've learned, and this is part of your values. So truthfulness isn't just the absence of deception, it's being completely forthright. That's what honesty and truthfulness is. And so if your employees perceive that you aren't allowing them to be truthful with the customer, they have to wonder what you're not being truthful with them about. If this is part of the culture that sometimes we lie or we deceive or we twist the truth, your employees probably aren't trusting what you tell them either. So in many of our contact centers, we let our employees tell customers because it's part of the value of being completely truthful. I'm in Honduras because the truth of the matter, my employee is proudly Honduran. Now, my customers may not like that, but it aligns with our value. And if I ask you, Steve, not to identify yourself as a Honduran or to feel guilty or bad because you did expose to a customer to the truth, then you have this conflicted set of values. And you want to find one that you make sure that your values as a company are being fully embraced, and then make sure that your partner embraces those same values.
I'm so glad that we're ending on this note because there's trust with a BPO partner. There's actually trust just with leaders and their agents too, to go off script if they need to do the kind of things that they know they're on the front line. They have the intuition how to address that customer and what that customer is asking and what they really need. The trust issue runs through the whole gamut.
It does.
Is there anything that we've left a stone unturned here? We've talked about a lot, but I just wanted to give you an opportunity. If there was anything additional that you wanted to say, that you had that opportunity right now.
I think we'll leave it there. We've covered a lot of good things, and hopefully we've enlightened some individuals as to not only the reasons to consider BPO partners, but the value to the business of upgrading their quality by finding a terrific BPO partner.
Fantastic. Steve, what I would love to do is ask your permission to maybe provide a link to your LinkedIn profile if people had follow-on questions. Would that be appropriate?
Absolutely. Love to help in that way.
Fantastic. Thank you for coming on and sharing all these insights and helping us follow our perceptions of how do we work with a BPO partner, and that we're not giving up quality, we're actually gaining quality. We're gaining good quality people who are very serious in their careers and want to be dedicated to what they're doing. I just appreciate all of your insights.
Hey, this was a lot of fun, Steve. Thanks.